Welcome in the class. Ladies and gentlemen, you are also welcome in this session. Today we are discussing first section of Kant's thesis of perpetual peace. In this section, Immanuel Kant puts forward six propositions. In his view, there are six things which are required to ensure international peace in order to avoid war. To perpetual peace. Immanuel Kant says the practical politician often looks down on the political theorist. The practical politician often looks down on the political theorist. It means that the practitioners of politics, they think the political philosophers, the academics, their knowledge is bookish. They are not well aware of the ground realities. So their knowledge is of limited value. This is what, in Kant's view, practical politicians thinks of political theorists. He thinks the practical politician thinks the theorist is only an academic. He believes the theorist's ideas are useless and no danger to the state. He believes these theorists' ideas are useless and they are no danger to the state. In the politician's view, the state must be based on experience. He thinks he can ignore the theorist's ideas. The practical politician thinks he can ignore the theorist's ideas, which are not very practical in his view. Therefore, if there is any conflict with the theorist, the politician must act fairly. Now, Immanuel Kant says if there is a conflict between a practical politician and a theorist, the politician must act fairly. He must not accuse the theorist of threatening the state because of his ideas. If a politician believes the theorist's ideas are not very practical, they are not well connected to the ground realities, then he should not interfere with or he should not threaten a theorist. He must not accuse the theorist of threatening the state because of his ideas. If a politician threatens, if a politician believes that the theorist's ideas are threatening the state, it simply means that theorist ideas are practical. So, if the politician threatens the theorist again, it means the theorist's ideas are not only academic, not only bookish, they are practical, they are related to the ground realities. The theorist must be allowed to speak and publish freely. Here, Immanuel Kant is talking about academic freedom. Academic freedom, the theorists, the academics, they may be free to speak, they may be free to publish their ideas. With this condition, the author protects himself from any bad or unfair interpretations. With this condition, the author protects himself from any bad or unfair interpretations. First section of the thesis of toward perpetual peace, which first section which contains the preliminary articles for perpetual peace among states. The first section contains the preliminary articles. So Immanuel Kant has discussed six preliminary articles for perpetual peace among states. I call them six propositions. Number one, first preliminary article or first proposition. No peace settlement which secretly reserves issues for a future war shall be considered valid. That the states should agree on this rule, that no peace settlement which secretly reserves issues for a future war shall be considered valid. Such a treaty would only be a short stop to fighting, not real peace. It would only delay war for a time. So, all existing causes for a future war should be addressed and they should be eliminated so that there's no reason for war in future. This is what Kant is saying here. Peace means the end of all fighting. Peace means the end of all fighting. Even adding the word perpetual to peace makes it sound doubtful and unnecessary. Even adding the word perpetual to peace makes it sound doubtful and unnecessary. A true peace settlement cancels all reasons for future war. A true peace settlement cancels all reasons for future war. So, here, this part of Kant's theory we can apply to Pakistan India situation. You may know in the past, many times when Pakistan asked India to seriously consider resolving the Kashmir problem peacefully, India responded by saying that we should sign a no war treaty. India many times asked Pakistan, it is recorded, well recorded in history, in books of foreign policy, in books of history, in books on Pak India relations, that many times India asked Pakistan, proposed to Pakistan that the two countries should sign a no war treaty. And almost every time Pakistan said, a no war treaty means nothing if the mutual disputes are not addressed peacefully. A no war treaty means nothing. And because Pakistan and India both are signatories of the United Nations Charter, and the United Nations Charter also requires its members not to attack each other. So, no war treaty means nothing in this situation. So, here we can apply this part of Kant's theory to Pakistan India disputes. So Kant says a true peace settlement cancels all reasons for future war. This is true even if the causes are hidden, are not yet known to both sides. This is true even if the causes are hidden, are not yet known to both sides. It is true even if clever people search old records and find these causes for future war. Each side might secretly keep old claims in mind for invading another country, for waging a war. They might plan to bring them up later when they feel stronger. They may stay silent now because they are too tired to keep fighting. But they still have bad feelings and plan to use the first good chance to start war again. If we look at this action by itself, it is dishonest. It belongs to tricky thinking. It belongs to tricky thinking. In other words, it is cheating. It is not fitting for a ruler. If a country, for the time being, stops a war but has bad intentions to, to start the war again when it feels stronger, when the time suits it. It is also not fitting for a ruler's minister to agree to such thinking. If a ruler has such bad intentions, his ministers should advise him not to do so. But if people believe that the true honor of the state lies in always growing its power by any means based on so called enlightened ideas of political wisdom, then this judgment will surely seem useless and too focused on theory. The second proposition, or the second preliminary article: no independently existing state, irrespective of whether it is large or small, shall be able to be acquired by another state through inheritance, exchange, purchase, or gift. In other words, no ruler can gift his state to somebody else. Nobody can inherit a state. No one can exchange the states, and no one can purchase a state. Kant explains it further why. A state is not a possession. A state is not a property like other properties, like the land where it stands. A state is a society of human beings. A state is populated by human beings. No one but the state itself may rule or use these people. So, people living in that state, they have the right to rule themselves. It is self rule. To take over a state which has its own strong foundation, like a tree trunk, and join it to another state, destroys it as a moral being. So, when state is taken over by another state, the self rule is gone. The right of that people of self rule is it is violated. And when people do not rule themselves, when there is no self rule, they cannot own the laws which are imposed on them, and they cannot grow morally, they cannot excel as moral beings. So it destroys them as moral beings. It treats the state like a mere thing. If a state is taken over by another, if it is gifted, if it is inherited, or if it is exchanged, it treats the state like a mere thing. But state which has human beings, it is not a mere thing. This action goes against the idea of the original contract, original social contract. Without this idea, no one can rightly claim power over a people. The people have the right to rule themselves. No one else can claim the right to rule them if he or she does not belong to them. Everyone knows the danger that this supposed right to take over has brought to Europe. Everyone knows the danger that this supposed right to take over states has brought to Europe. In Europe, and even in other parts of the world, the kings, monarchs, the rulers have been waging wars to capture other states, to conquer other states, to occupy other states. So, Immanuel Kant does not like this. He discourages this. This custom is not known in other parts of the world. Uh, Immanuel Kant says this is not known in other parts of the world. It has caused problems even in recent times. Some think, some people think that states can marry each other. They do this partly to grow their power easily through family ties. So Immanuel Kant also discourages this trend of marriage among states. They also do it to increase their land. Another example is when one state rents out its soldiers to another. When one state rents out its soldiers to another. They do this to fight an enemy that is not a common enemy. If there is a common enemy, then the two states can make an alliance. But if the enemy is not common, the other state should not join the war. In this way, the people are treated like objects to be used and thrown away. So, if a country is sending its army to another country for waging a war against the third state, which does not threaten to the first state, so it is sending its troops just for being killed, just to kill others, because there was no problem with the first state. The third preliminary article, the third proposition for perpetual peace, Immanuel Kant says, standing armies shall gradually be abolished entirely. Immanuel Kant proposes that standing armies shall gradually be abolished entirely. Why? Kant believes the standing armies always threaten other states with war. They always threaten other states with war by staying ready for battle all the time. The standing armies are always available, always ready to start a war. And Immanuel Kant says they should be abolished. There should be no standing armies in the world. They push other states to keep increasing the size of their armies without any limit. If one state has a standing army, the other states are obliged, they are forced to keep the standing armies in order to defend themselves. The cost of keeping peace becomes heavier than the cost of a short war. So, if there is no war, even then the standing armies, they require budget, they require expenses, they require salaries. So peace becomes heavier, peace becomes costly. Because of this, large armies become a reason for starting wars to reduce the burden. So in the past, the rulers had to wage wars in order to just snatch money and snatch wealth of other nations to feed their army, to finance their armies. So standing armies themselves have been a cause for war, have been a source for international war. Also, hiring people to kill or be killed uses human beings like machines and tools in the hands of the state. So armies or militaries are known as killing machines. So Immanuel Kant says we should not have killing machines. This goes against the rights of humanity. Humans should not be used as killing machines, as killers. It is different when citizens freely and regularly train with weapons to defend themselves and their country from attacks. If citizens are trained for self defense, for civil defense, it is okay. Immanuel Kant agrees with this. It would be the same problem with hoarding wealth. So, on the one hand, there should be no standing armies. On the other hand, there should not be, the states should not have huge amounts, huge wealth, huge money. Because if they will have huge money, they will think of starting a war. Because war requires money. Other states would see it as a threat and might attack first. So it also attracts attack. If one state becomes very rich, it has huge wealth, its opponents may attack it for its wealth. This is because military power, alliances, and money are the three types of power, and money might be the strongest tool for war. But it is hard to measure the true wealth of a state. It is hard to measure the true wealth of a state, which makes preemptive attacks less likely. The fourth preliminary article, or the fourth proposition for international peace, Immanuel Kant says the state shall not contract debts in connection with its foreign affairs. The state shall not contract debts in connection with its foreign affairs. The state should not borrow money from other states. There is nothing wrong with asking for financial help from inside or outside the state for the economy. If there are economic needs, then borrowing money from inside or outside is okay, it has no problem. This help can be for better roads, it can be for new towns, or for food storage for bad harvests. But when used in fights between states, the credit system becomes dangerous. The borrowed money becomes dangerous if it is used for waging wars. The credit system is a clever invention by a business-minded people of this country. Immanuel Kant was German, so he is talking about his country, Germany. The credit system is a clever invention by a business-minded people of this country. It allows debts to grow without limit because not all creditors ask for payment at the same time. Not all creditors ask for payment at the same time, so the borrower can manage it. Borrower can manage the repayments. This system can act like a huge war fund, bigger than the wealth of all other states together. It can be used until tax money runs out. But the loss of tax money can be delayed for a long time by boosting industry and trade through credit. But the loss of tax money can be delayed for a long time by boosting industry and trade through credit. The ease of starting wars with such credit, along with the ruler's desire for war, which seems natural to humans, becomes a big obstacle to lasting peace. So the credits, they facilitate wars because the rulers know if even if the tax money runs out, they can borrow from other states and they can continue waging wars, and it becomes a problem for lasting peace. It becomes a problem for lasting international peace. This obstacle must be banned. Availability of foreign credit for wars should be banned. So states should not be given loans if it if the state is using it for a war. This ban must be a part of the basic rules for lasting peace. If one state goes bankrupt, it will hurt other states too, even if they did nothing wrong. So, one state continues borrowing from others. At the end, it cannot pay back. So, it will hurt the global economy. It will hurt the global economic system. So the other states which have done no wrong, they will also suffer due to the bankruptcy of a borrowing state. It will cause them harm. Other states then have the right to unite against such a reckless state. If a state is just borrowing and borrowing and borrowing and spending money without any serious thinking for any financial responsibility, fiscal responsibility, ultimately it will cause harm to the global economy. Cause harm to the regional economy, and the international law, international system should discourage this behavior. The fifth preliminary article, the fifth proposition, Immanuel Kant says, no state shall forcibly interfere in the constitution and government of another state. So it is the principle of non-interference. No state has the right, should have the right to interfere in another state's affairs, internal affairs. What can justify its action? If one state interferes in another state, what can justify its interference? Maybe the offense it causes to the people of another state. Okay, if the state which is interfering thinks or believes or claims that the other state has offended it, it has caused problem to it, it has hurt it, but it can serve as a warning instead. So, in spite of interfering in the other state, the state which has suffered interference or offense should warn the first state, showing the harm a people brings on itself through lawlessness. In general, a bad example set by one free person for another does not count as harm to the other. Very, very important. It is very important. A bad example set by one free person for another does not count as harm to the other. It would be different if a state were broken into two groups by a civil war. If a state is broken into two states by a civil war, it is a different case. Each group would claim to be a separate state. In that case, an outside state could help one side without being guilty of interfering. An outside state could help one side without being guilty of interfering. This is because there would be anarchy. Because a new state is born, it may need help for stability, for forming a government, for forming institutions. So in this case, it would not amount to interference. But if the civil conflict is not yet settled, then outside help would break the rights of that people. So if civil conflict is going on in a country, if the civil war is going on in the country, the other countries should not interfere. This is what Immanuel Kant is saying here. That people depends on no one else and is only dealing with its own weakness. Such help would be an offense and would make the freedom of all states unsafe. So, if other states interfere in a state which is facing a civil war, it will establish a bad example, and all states will become unsafe. The sixth article, preliminary article, or the sixth proposition for international peace. No state shall allow itself such hostilities in wartime as would make mutual trust in a future period of peace impossible. No state shall allow itself such hostilities in wartime as would make mutual trust in a future period of peace impossible. So, if a war occurs between two states, it should also observe certain principles, humanitarian principles. It should not amount to brutality, because if such things take place, it will hurt peace in future. Such acts would include the employment of assassins, poisoners, breach of surrender, incitement of treason within the enemy state, etc. So, even during the war, no states should employ these techniques and methods. Assassins should not be employed. There should be no poisoners. There should be no breach of surrender. And there should be no incitement of treason within the enemy state. These are dishonorable tricks. They are not honorable tricks, honorable strategies. They are dishonorable strategies of war. Even in war, there must be some trust in the enemy's way of thinking. Otherwise, peace would never be possible. War would turn into a war of extermination. If these things happen, then the states would think to eliminate the enemy. They will never live in peace with each other. War is only a sad method used in a natural state where there is no court to settle disputes by law. So war takes place in a natural state, in the state of nature. In war, neither side can be called unjust because this would need a court decision. Only a court decides which side is unjust because there's no, in Immanuel Kant's time there were no international courts, and even still in this 21st century the courts which exist, they are not very powerful, they are not truly powerful. So Immanuel Kant says neither side can be called unjust because this would need a court decision. It is the result of the war or divine judgment that shows which side is right. A war to punish another state is not possible because no state has authority over another. A war to punish another state is not possible because no state has authority over another. A war of extermination, where both sides and all rights are destroyed, could bring peace only over a huge graveyard of humanity. So, if both sides, all states, want to live in peace after eliminating their enemies, after killing all their enemies, then there may be peace in the world, but at that time there will be no human beings in this world. All all people will have been killed, and this world will become a huge graveyard. So this is not a wise way to have international peace by killing all the enemies. Rather, the states should live in peace with one another. They should believe in mutual existence, mutual peace. Such a war and the use of means leading to it must be completely forbidden. It is clear that the tricks mentioned above would surely lead to such a war. It is clear that the tricks mentioned above would surely lead to such a war. Once they are used, these evil methods would not stay only in war. They would continue even in times of peace and destroy peace itself. Employing assassins, employing poisoners. Okay, these techniques, if one state uses in wartime, it may use it in peacetime, and there will be no real peace. Although all the laws mentioned above are in the intention of those in power, only laws that stop certain actions, some of them are still strict laws. Although all the laws mentioned above are in the intention of those in power, only laws that stop certain actions. Some of them are still strict laws. These laws must be followed no matter what. Violations of these laws must be stopped immediately. So, Immanuel Kant called these preliminary actions as international law, international laws. So, this was the first section of his thesis toward perpetual peace. I stop my presentation here. I join you back on Google Meet.